Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's summer meeting on August 12th, 2015. We'll have our Town Administrator Dave Williams read the agenda, but first I'm going to read the notice of remote participation. Chuck Yan, Selectman Chuck Yan will be participating remotely because he is on unavoidable travel in accordance with the Town of Sherborn Board of Selectmen policy on remote participation. Chuck, are you on the line and can you hear?
Yes, I can. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. All votes will be taken by roll call vote. Anyone interested in speaking or providing comment must be recognized by the meeting chair before speaking. Once recognized, all speakers must come to the front of the room to be near the phone equipment, regardless of how brief the comment may be. Before offering comment, the speaker must identify themselves by their first and last name every time they are recognized, and additionally should provide their home address the first time they are recognized. If a communications problem is encountered, we will take a brief break and try to resolve the issue. If the line disconnects, the remote participant is responsible for trying to reestablish the connection by dialing back into the phone system. If the problem cannot be resolved in a few minutes or continues to occur, the use of the equipment will be stopped. Background noise, conversation, and speaking without being recognized should be kept to a minimum. We ask that all attendees remain quiet throughout the meeting unless recognized to speak. Dave Williams, you're recognized to speak. Would you please read the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. And to my knowledge, there are none of those items. Then a public comment period, and then an update from CM&D Director Ed Wagner. Then consideration of community compact, then a consideration of town council subcommittee recommendation, then routine business for town administrator report, acceptance of gifts from playground equipment and skate park equipment, and then selectmen reports with Selectman Durensis scheduled already, and then meeting calendar review, setting the next meeting date, and consideration of approval of minutes, consideration of proposals submitted by Abbey Road Development, LLC, and then an executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property as it pertains to the Abbey Road development.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could I ask that we amend the agenda to change the order of the items, since the women representing the playground committee are here with some children? It doesn't have to be right now, but...
No, but that would be fine. We can move that up after the CM&D Director's presentation. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
And I know also Selectman Durensis has some time constraints. We may try to move some things around for that, but we're also trying to get through the agenda in a pretty efficient way tonight, so maybe we'll be out of here without too much delay. Is there any public comment tonight, Diane? No public comment. Okay. We have, I guess it's a little early, but Ed, if you're ready to go, we can take Ed Wagner, our CM&D Director, with an update on what's going on in the world of CM&D.
Good evening. In relation to our paving schedule for this year, we were finally able to successfully negotiate getting aggregate into town. They're going to be in next Wednesday. The process is going to be 2 days of grinding and then 2 days of paving. So we'll be grinding Wednesday, Thursday, and they'll be in almost immediately afterwards to pave for another 2 days. The other hopefully we're going to have them in and finalize that job by Tuesday of the following week. The plan in speaking with Lieutenant Bento and is to close the entire roadway down for the grinding and the paving in order to expedite it. So what we'll be doing is we've got our message board out there. We're going to be putting notice on the website that we'll be closing the roadway down except for local traffic during the work hours.
And say again what road that is so everybody knows.
There'll be Maple Street between Western and Washington.
Okay, Maple between Western and Washington. Very good. Excellent. And that was really the big job this year, wasn't it? That was the one
Yes.
you had scheduled. Anything else that you're doing, Ed, in the upcoming months?
We still have the issue of the chip seals, if you want to revisit that with the Chapter 90 funds. Also, as we discussed last year, was the use of the grindings from this job We're going to be transporting those over to the emergency access road at Pine Hill, where hopefully I'll be having a contractor standing by and spreading those out and compacting those as they arrive. So we're going to be utilizing those over there to kind of finalize that emergency access road.
Okay. Any other questions here?
I want to reiterate what he just said, is starting Wednesday, Maple Street will be closed
Yes.
to through traffic.
Right. It
That's
sounds like
Wednesday,
there's a-
Thursday, Friday, maybe Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, is it closed Saturday yet? Are you doing work on Saturday?
We haven't gotten the final word of exactly when they're going to start the paving. The grinding is definitely Wednesday, Thursday, and I haven't gotten a commitment of a Friday, Saturday, or a Monday, Tuesday on the paving. And as soon as I have that, I'll update the website and get notice to the board.
It's great. Good. And then what do you do? Paint after that? Paint the lines?
Usually a couple weeks afterwards, we let the pavement settle and let traffic run over for a couple weeks, and then we'll do a center line down through.
Great. Good. Any other questions, Paul?
Just a comment that Governor Baker has introduced legislation to appropriate $25 million to reimburse communities for snow and ice from last winter, which would mean $31,000 for Sherborn. And most of that impacted your budget. It's going to be distributed under a Chapter 90 formula, but I don't know if the Chapter 90 process would be followed. In other words, is that money going to go to the general fund, or is that money going to be available for Ed to use and added to the Chapter 90 funds? That's sort of an accounting question, but the legislation itself says it's going to track the Chapter 90, so I think it's going to come as an additional Chapter 90 amount.
That's what they typically do, and then we follow the a modified process of notifying them of what projects, and then they usually put certain project limitations. And usually with those reimbursement funds, they'd like to see it restricted to potholes, guardrails, something immediately to do with the roadway and winter damage.
Okay.
Any updates on Route 16?
Yeah, no, the budget didn't include the money for Route 16. It included $50,000 for the town for other purposes. The offices of our senator and our representative called the town hall, talked to the town administrator, and we were lucky to get the $50,000. So to some extent, money's fungible. The $50,000 relieves other items that we would have had to have. That's 25 for the transfer station and 25 for town hall. And on the transfer station, we have a second coat that needs to go into the transfer station at some point with drainage. So all that money can be moved around, and maybe that would free up some money to be used on Route 16, but that wasn't $400,000.
Got it. Okay. Anybody else with comments up here?
too late to do anything with Route 16 at this point, right? This year?
With the available funds that we have, yeah, not to that extent. We'd be looking in the 300 range to kind of make a good dent up there.
Okay.
I could run some numbers on some smaller areas, but we could hold off on the chip seals and take that money that was going to be allocated for that and redirect that over to Washington Street. That's the other possibility.
I think.
But
there's
would
a
you
lot-
even get that done this year? Sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I think there's a lot of interest in getting at least some of Washington Street done. I think I've heard that, and I don't know if the folks up here think so, but I do.
Yeah, no, there's, and there's definitely interest on my part in taking care of that, and that's why this year I was hoping to get the extra article money through. But at the same time, too, I don't want to neglect the Old Orchard area or the Harrington Ridge for a chip seal, because that is a good preventative measure in sealing those roadways up for further damage. But I'm open to anything you guys would like to do.
So where are we on pulling together a comprehensive plan?
The top 10 list that we have, I believe that was in your packages in the beginning of this year, listing of roadways. That is still there. I can further expand on that in giving estimates on each one of those.
You know, I know you did that, but then we got into the whole discussion of how do we prioritize these things.
Yeah, but that's later in the agenda in the compact. That's part of the compact with the Baker administration.
The assistance for capital planning is what we submitted the compact application for
Yep.
technical assistance. I think that's what we were pointing at would assist our CM&D department in road management, a road management system. So Ed did some research and found that there was a previous road management system, but it was quite old, so it couldn't be picked up and run with. So we've just been looking to get the compact through and then start doing whatever any other towns are doing
Right,
with road
but that's going
management.
to take time.
Yes, and we
Right.
did get the quote from the engineer for the $25,000 to come in and do the comprehensive plan, and then we were directed to see if we could find those funds by the state and not procure the engineer for the comprehensive plan.
So those are our two choices. There's nothing in between sort of seat of the pants and,
We could do it seat of the pants in-house, and, you know, we could come up with a makeshift grading A, B, C, and F, and just rate them with a list of the roads. That's a start to something. But I defer to,
I can pull that out of
Ed's
my
list
office
on that.
tomorrow morning.
I mean,
the whole
you,
town.
From the top listing of roadways that I would like to address that in my opinion, are priorities, yes.
Okay.
All right, we've got Kitty Sturgeon. And Kitty, you have to come up and talk into a microphone because we have a remote participant. No, we have a remote participant. You have to speak in the microphone.
Okay, I'm not on your list, and I did not intend to say anything tonight.
She has to be near the
The
microphone.
little one.
Well, that one will work,
The
won't
little one.
Well, that's the little one right on the table.
Chuck Yan is participating
it?
right
No,
now.
right here.
Oh,
This.
I have.
Chuck can hear through that.
I can talk to that, or what?
Yeah, you took both of them. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Kitty Sturgis, Hunting Lane. Sorry I was late, and I don't know if Ed already mentioned this, but could we use the police signs that they have for flashing information to direct people that we are closing Maple Street and we are closing from Western Avenue to Washington Street as so people who might be driving those routes would see it well in advance?
Good idea.
That's the end of my thought.
Yeah, good idea. Thanks.
Thank you.
We did put those out this morning. It's located on Maple Street, just down south from Pleasant Street.
I'm not sure she heard that. It's there now.
It's there now, but
it's on the street
it's on
instead
the
of
street. It
the
should be
ends.
on Western Avenue, and it should be on Washington Street.
We had a little bit of discussion on where it should go, and speaking with Lieutenant Bento, they preferred it was over in that area. My original spot was going to be on Western, right before you turn to catch most of the commuting traffic, and he felt that by having it down over there, we would catch more of the local traffic to notify people locally. In a perfect world, we would have another message board where we could put one on each end.
Will we have people directing traffic around that bottleneck, or are they just going to...
We're going to have 3 police details, one at each end, and then one following the crew. And then my personnel will be taking care of the side roads.
All right, good. Good luck.
One other update the board requested was for Woodland and Goulding. The engineer is going to be out another couple weeks to do the survey. I met this morning with an engineer from Verizon on the pole removal relocation. And as it turns out, I also have to meet with a representative from the cable company engineering and a representative from the electrical engineering department, and somehow I have to wrangle all 3 engineers together for a plan and a date of when it will actually be done. So I've got 2 more engineers to go through to get them over to perform a site visit and lay out their plans or their needs for the pole relocation. Right off the bat, we're looking at a removal of 7 trees, which I indicated to them that I would take care of utilizing our current contractor, and that'll save a little bit of money from having them utilize their crews.
Okay. I think you probably need tree hearings on those too.
We will follow a tree hearing process on it, but I believe for roadway improvements in that, under the Chapter 87, we have the right to take down trees for roadways.
Well, that makes sense.
But I would like to post them just so everyone is fair shake of
Yep, good.
notice of what we're doing.
Can I just go back over the issue that Mark had raised?
Right, the title ladder pole,
I'm concerned that we actually get construction done this season. And you've posed the question, can you go ahead and chip seal some roads? Or can you do some work on Washington Street? And as I understand where we are, you're going to provide additional information to the board. And then we're going to, at some point, let you go with something further, or what is our plan? I'm mindful of the fact that the construction season is going to end and winter will be upon us, and if we're undecided about where to spend the money won't get spent.
The Maple Street's going to eat up a huge portion of what we have currently banked in Chapter 90 funds. The chip seal, I believe that total was in the 125, 130-ish range, and that would have utilized most of what we had in Chapter 90, I think, with a remainder of in the neighborhood of $50,000. Taking $100,000 and throwing it over at Washington Street, that I have to run some numbers and I can tell you exactly how many feet that we can pave. Getting aggregate in to do Maple Street in the time frame that I wanted them in has been a struggle. I actually explored going to our second bidder. I got them to commit, and at the final moment, aggregate came back and said that they were going to meet my deadline. But getting the second bidder in would have cost the town another $60,000, $65,000 because we would have to adhere to the second bid prices.
All right, I'm just trying to figure out the timeline. So what I'm hearing you say is that there isn't enough money to do Washington right now.
Not in its entirety, but we can certainly mark out a stretch of it. I can let you know what our final balance is and exactly how many feet we can pave.
So, David, can you get Ed on our next meeting agenda to follow up on that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, does that work? Good, thanks, Ed.
The ideal is to get work done before kids are back in school, and it's already...
That ship's
That's not going to happen.
it's gone.
Yeah.
We barely got Maple Street in. And we haven't put this out to bid yet.
The chip seal thing, you can take it off like the state contractor, can't you?
Chip seal I can take off our current contract through MAPC. It is getting late to rally them and get them up here and on a schedule. In the case with aggregate, I actually started back in May and had them out here and surveyed Maple Street, doing their measurements, and the issue is everybody wants their paving done at the same time, and these companies, even though they bid on our town, they also have other contracts that pay much more than us, and that's how they end up picking and choosing who they're going to go pave first. So it's a little bit of a fight on our part my part rather, to get them in here in the
When do you
time
need to
frame.
know from this board, and so that you can do something, whether it's Washington or chip seal or whatever, before
It
winter?
would have to be ASAP.
So could you have them in on the next agenda?
That's what we just said, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. Good. All right, thanks, Ed. Thanks for the update. Let's see. We said we would move, if it's okay with the board, to move the playground equipment and what, skate park equipment Sean, both of those, you want
This,
to?
well, the skate park people aren't here, but the playground people
Playground people?
are. So I think we're going to have to
So
split.
if that's okay, is
It's two
everyone all
separate
right with
items, anyway.
moving the playground equipment item up? So we do that now and let people get off to whatever they would rather be doing than sitting here? Great, good. So who's coming up for that?
I might throw the lead in first.
You're it? Good,
Yeah.
perfect.
Well, they are, but this came up, as everybody knows. We're doing a playground rebuild. And this is more of a process issue. Obviously, it's going to become a gift from the town. Sorry, from a 501c3 to the town. But the process in which we're going to go through starts now. Right, there's the demolition of the playground, and that's being done by the volunteers, myself, and lots of other people. So in the discussion with David, it was we should gift it now, so that we at least acknowledge that there's a process that's going to happen, that without this, I don't have the authority to go take the town's playground and remove it and do all the site work, which is what's going to happen. So in gifting it now, we're basically going to take a vote to allow that process to take place. I can't define that 100% at the moment, but there's some town assets that are going to be used. We're going to, we have to ship the equipment in, either the fire station or CM&D, and, we have to use Recreation's power. So there's a lot of little items
The
that,
equipment is coming in, is being gifted to the town, is that what you're saying?
well, the equipment's being purchased by the 501c3
I see,
through various vendors,
yeah.
and will be shipped in, and then the build is actually physically putting all that together. But
Right, I'm just asking what the gift is. The gift is...
the gift will be all the materials
that
that'll be
people
purchased.
have donated or purchased
Yes.
that are going to the town, so the town has a nice playground.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
I would say, what, they could move to accept a gift of equipment, materials with a value estimated to be potentially up to $250,000.
Yeah.
So moved.
Yes. All right. I'll second that. But is there anyone else who needs to speak on this, Sean, or what are we doing?
Nobody wants to speak.
Okay, that's fine.
I think they should.
Well, we have a motion and a second, and we'll
Well,
I guess
before-
expand the discussion to thank everybody for
Yeah,
their
that's-
volunteer efforts in doing this for the town. And I think, those of us with older kids know that this is probably the third cycle through, but this will be the best one, I'm sure. And it'll hopefully last for a number of years before whenever the fourth cycle starts. So
Well,
great,
thank
it's
you.
great. It's really great. Thanks for doing that.
And by no means is this the final presentation coming from that group. This was just a process.
Great.
And it won't be
Well,
this face making the presentation.
Okay.
You need to
I,
do,
I do hope we have them in before it's finished so that we can do a little more formal recognition. And it might be useful to actually have a list of names of people who ought to be thanked by name.
Maybe the newspaper will run a big spread on this, too.
I would expect they will. I think we can expect a presentation prior to the build.
Great.
Because remember, there's still a fundraising effort here. That's, it's not complete, both with, monetary, and we need a huge amount of help from volunteers.
Well,
So that
here's your-
drive is still ongoing, and then of course they're going to come in after.
So here's your chance to tell the public that they can come and make a donation and get their name on the list.
Exactly. Thanks for doing it.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Motion by Paul to accept the gift of, what was it, David?
equipment and materials
Up to about $200,000, $250,000. I seconded that. We'll take a roll call vote. Sean, I'm guessing you're in favor?
I am in favor.
Okay. Mark?
Yes.
Chuck on the phone?
Oh,
Did we lose you, Chuck? Sounds like we lost Chuck. Okay. And I'll vote yes, and Paul?
Durensis votes aye.
Okay, so we have 4-0 with Chuck either off the line or stepped out for a moment.
He's gone rogue.
He's gone rogue, exactly. Okay,
Hey, Mike,
yeah,
oh, there he is.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Yes, I vote yes.
great, okay. We were getting worried. Fantastic, okay, thanks. All right, so the next item here, David, is the community compact considerations. So if you want to start that.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming in.
Those are my kids, by the way. They should be recognized too.
Okay,
Hooray
we're for Sean's kids.
for Sean's kids. What are their names?
Brenna, Chandler, and Trevor.
We have a good number of kids at this meeting, maybe a record, I think. This is
Yeah.
great. But they've all left already, and it's only...
They were very well behaved, too, weren't they?
And they're going to miss the community compact.
Really well behaved.
Disappointed.
For the community compact application, the Board of Selectmen identified at their last meeting two main areas, and one was capital planning for facilities, fleet management, road management, and housing. So we submitted the attached description of the housing best practices that we would be looking to have technical assistance on. And then also under financial management, the capital planning best practices that we would request technical assistance on. And this compact, the application was received and they confirmed receipt of it. I'm not sure how long it'll take to get a draft document back from them for the selectmen's consideration. I hope to have it at the next meeting.
Great.
And that's, I don't know if Paul wants to mention what the compact is exactly.
We went through that the last time, but
We did, right. It was for technical assistance.
if you're up to it, Paul, you want to, or...
Well, the Baker administration has a program by which communities sign up these community compacts, and they provide technical assistance and work with the different municipalities. They have several times invited the town of Sherborn to participate. I'm delighted that we have submitted this, and I think they will be accepting this and signing a compact with us. And what this should do is, first of all, it gives us extra credits on any grant applications that we apply for. But they also have technical assistance, and the items that we've asked for are things that I know that they have the technical assistance people on hand to do. So I'm hoping that if this compact gets approved by the board, which will take another vote, another meeting, then we'll have access to some free professional assistance on these activities.
It's great.
Great.
It was good to get something for nothing. That's excellent. So we'll move on to the next item, if we could. Unless anybody else has any comments on that? Okay. Which is consideration of town council subcommittee recommendations. So Paul's recusing himself. I'll give the background of it. Chuck, you're on the line. Feel free to chime in. Chuck, Selectman Jan and I were a subcommittee of two who met earlier this week to go over the two proposals we received for town council services. One of them from our current town council, Petrini and Associates, and the other one from, get the name right here, David.
Myrick O'Connell.
Myrick
O'Connell. And we went through those proposals, and we went through a discussion of what we're looking for in a town council and some of the issues and concerns we have, both with upcoming items that we know we're going to be engaging in, including several contract negotiations, labor contract negotiations, but also past experience, and as well as budgetary considerations. And in the end, we're coming to you with a recommendation. The recommendation would be that we would continue with Petrini as town council on the assurance that David has already received that Barbara St. Andre will continue to be our personal point person, or Chris Petrini. In other words, we'll be dealing with one of the principals on most items, and it'll only be delegated to the extent that they've already vetted the request and think it's appropriate to delegate it, and we'll have Barbara's ear if we want Barbara's ear. We would also, we had looked at another contract that Petrini has with the town of Sudbury, which is a little more favorable financially. They're a slightly bigger town. They seem to have fewer hours built into their contract, but it's also a 3-year commitment that they've made, and since we're still on an annual basis, I think that explains some of the discrepancy. And it's not a huge discrepancy. We did notice that some of their pricing on individual levels of attorneys were different, and I would recommend that we ask David to negotiate with Petrini to get those rates, the attorney rates, to the same level as the Sudbury contract is. The other part of the recommendation that Selectman Yan and I had was that we consider also going to the market and asking for proposals for, specifically for labor contract work. We do know we have a police, what do we have? We have a chief's contract up and a...
You have the
a
police
police-
chiefs, the
and
police lieutenant,
lieutenant,
police
and
officers.
the police officers. We have 3 police contracts up. There is an attorney we've used for those police contracts. We may be interested in using that same attorney, but we would like to have a proposal if the board agrees, and you know, put it out to a couple other places that have expertise in that area, including potentially Merrick, which does have strong labor based on their proposal from what we saw. You know, the idea would be in an area that we've traditionally used other council besides town council, to try out, you know, another vendor and see potentially if we've got some interest in using them for more things. So that's the idea. Just trying to keep things, keep some sense of competition, but also in sticking with Petrini, realizing there's some institutional knowledge that we benefit from with having Barbara as our town council. That's the recommendation. Chuck, do you have anything to add on that?
Just one brief thing. It was a terrific summary, Mike. The recommendation was a fairly easy one to make. The Myrick proposal was very different and not very competitive with the Petrini proposal. So this is a pretty easy recommendation and one that I'm very confident in.
Great. Yeah, and just to, because it was a little unclear what Chuck just said, he said it was an easy recommendation to make. The Myrick proposal was very different than the Petrini one, and from an economic standpoint wasn't as competitive, and Chuck was very comfortable making the recommendation.
So are we precluded from signing a 3-year agreement?
No.
I don't think we would be. We had a 2-year agreement at one point.
The council agreements have been 1 year, but yeah, you can go up to 3 years without town meeting approval. If you can go over 3 years if you have town meeting approval.
I think we had a 2-year when I came on the board. We were in the second year of a 2-year. With
Yeah, it was like a guarantee. After the first year, you had an option for renewal to the second. I think that's
Right.
what you did. And but you know, you could go under this 1 year with the full board and revisit the whole thing again, or
Are there
You
no,
could come up
no
with other-
termination?
There are termination provisions. That's the other thing we have to work on in terms of the language of the
You're right.
termination provision was not satisfactory last time, and I think the same language made it into this one too.
right. And there's definitely one word that needs to come out of that language that helps. So.
So are you suggesting we should think about asking them what the proposal would be if it was 3 years?
I would.
Okay. Do you want to see if?
I don't know what your timing is on
Well,
this.
right now we're paying on an hourly basis.
Well,
when
that
we
was my
use town
second
council.
question, was...
Until we
would
get this
be
contract.
retroactive to the end of the last contract?
That would have to be, no,
I don't
it's
know,
not.
I don't know what we've spent since July 1.
What's proposed is prorated for the year. What I asked them today, which they probably haven't had time to respond to, is how are you, if this new contract is $65,000 of retainer work and a $10,000 waiver of work after that, how are we prorating the additional $10,000? And we could ask them if they could retroactive the contract and net out what's already been charged or paid.
We may want to figure out what that is first too.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or whichever one is most in our advantage.
So it sounds like the step would be not to make an actual selection tonight, other than to say we would prefer to have Petrini, and we'd like to see if there's another structure that would even save us more from using Petrini, right? I mean,
Well,
do it
yeah,
every year.
I would defer to your subcommittee, whether or not you think that's a good idea, but it would obviously give David more flexibility in negotiation.
Well, the point is, he could come back with a final contract to us at the next meeting,
Right.
right? So you can at least make the inquiry, and then if it looks like that's a better deal, if
Right.
if you think it's a better deal, you can come back to us with that option.
Right. Okay.
I'd be interested to hear what
Yeah,
Chuck
Chuck.
has to say about that. Chuck,
Yep.
did you hear that conversation?
I heard a bit, I thought it was Mark suggesting that we may want to consider a multi-year contract.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that we've been pleased with Petrini's work. The question I've got is, do we look for a reduction to a $60,000 retainer because it's a 3-year agreement, or do we lock in the $65,000? Because more likely than not, legal fees are only going to be going up.
The Sudbury contract was 3 years at 60.
But they didn't have the $10,000 on top of that, did they?
No.
So we're really getting 75 for 65, the way they've got it proposed, right?
Right.
Right. Yes.
So in Sudbury, you'd get 75 for 75 for 3 years. We'd get 75 for 65 for 1 year. If Sudbury
Okay.
went up to 75. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right,
So it's really a little bit of just a risk assessment in terms of whether you're apt to go high or not.
Right. Right.
I think, given our track record, we've been
Consider
high.
that.
Yeah, we've been high the last several years. And, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know what
But
next year will be
improving,
like.
I think, actually.
I think improving, it's, yeah.
Yes.
We've tried to avoid litigation.
Well, if you're willing to wait, I would ask David have that conversation just to see if there's anything there.
I don't think we're apt to use a ton of council time in the next 3 weeks, so yeah, I would say
not.
we could wait, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll
You okay with that?
I'll
Sounds good.
Yeah, I don't think we were going to sign off on any, I mean, you don't have a final contract.
We weren't going to sign
The
a
intent
contract.
is still to come back with a final contract
Yeah,
to the
that's
next
right.
meeting anyway, right?
Yeah, we weren't going to sign a contract tonight.
Oh.
Right.
So,
So we'll I'll slice it up a couple of different ways and
okay,
bring it back.
great, good. And I told Barbara when I talked to her that I thought you would probably be calling her tomorrow anyway, and she said that was fine. So.
Okay. Good.
All right, good. Chuck,
Great,
you
thank
okay
you.
with that approach?
Yes. Yes, I am.
Good.
And we will follow the same process for Labor Council.
Well, I think we would start a process for Labor Council at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, if Petrini wants to bid on that specifically, that's fine. That's stuff that's outside the retainer anyway, typically, isn't it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, don't feel restricted to just the 3 names we had here. If there's other people you know of, we should talk about that.
Okay. It's hard to beat the reputation of Merrick with personnel. So.
Yeah.
But we'll find
it's just,
other.
they're more pricey than some of the others, so you just have to kind of compare apples to apples.
Okay.
Good. So that's done, and next we have, I guess we can call Paul back in. You want to vote on whether to call Paul back in, or are we okay? So your roll call?
He's halfway to picking his wife off the boat.
All right. Welcome back, Selectman Durensis. Staff reports, we're up to staff reports. So David, did you have anything to report on?
Yeah, just a couple of things. One, this year is going better than many years in the past as far as Farm Pond and its closures. So that's going very well. We haven't had one closure yet, and in the past we've had probably averaging 3 to 5. So knock on wood, hopefully there's, the testing still stays down and we can stay through the whole season without a closure. Another item was the Insurance Advisory Committee. That was the selectmen are responsible for naming the retiree appointment to that. We sent out a card to each of the retirees who had used town health insurance, asking them for any volunteers to serve on that committee, and we've had a pretty good response. I think there have been 3 so far, and it only went out on Tuesday.
So you'll get some background on each of those people who, and give us a package that we can choose from when the time comes?
We're sending them the same application package that we use for regular appointments, so.
Good.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a contest for a committee spot? Wow.
Got it, yeah, right.
This is exciting.
And
Perhaps we can offer them a second choice of committee.
Leland Farms.
Right.
Whole list.
There's a list. That's right. Sean, that's a great idea.
We have word that Whitney Farms will likely be having its first certificate of occupancy issued in the next few days. And a community center update. Construction in respect, this is from the community center. Construction in respect to the Verizon data center area was completed on Monday, and this was the life safety issue that everybody had been concerned about. The building inspector is scheduled to come in to inspect that work, and in the meantime, they're cleaning out the attic, and they have to complete some additional construction that's targeted to repairing the failed beam and the trusses relatively quickly by September 30th, which was ordered by the building inspector. The Dover-Sherborn Middle School theater program has resumed rehearsals in the building, and the piano teacher has moved back into the office that was being rented. So it seems that they're getting back on their feet.
Okay.
So after that small closure. And that's all I have.
All right, next we had skate park equipment acceptance. I don't know who's in charge of that one.
Leo was coming in at 7 o'clock.
Well, maybe we'll get to 7 if we do the other things, and Paul talks really slowly, but I don't think we have much stuff afterwards.
If not, I'm prepared to.
I think Paul was going to, the only other thing, unless other people have selectmen reports, we were going to talk about appointments, and Selectman Duranxis was going to talk about public records law.
Okay.
So do you want to do appointments now? Do we have appointments, David? Is that what this list is?
Yes. Yes. A number of these appointments are staff appointments for positions that we fill every year.
Yep.
Oil burner inspector Rick Aston for a 1-year term expiring June 2016. Tree warden Brian McSweeney, 1-year term for expiring June 2016. Building commissioner Felix Zemmel for a 1-year term expiring June 2016. Assistant building inspector Walter Avalone, 1-year term expiring June 2016. Wiring inspector Richard Bemis, 1-year term expiring June 2016. Deputy wiring inspector Ralph Deedy, 1-year term expiring June 2016. Plumbing gas inspector Thomas Frasca, 1-year term June 2016. Deputy plumbing and gas inspector Ray Grenier Jr. for a 1-year term expiring June 2016.
What about recycling committee? Do we have one down there next to recycling committee?
Well, I was just doing the staff ones first,
Gotcha,
and then
okay.
that's going to go down.
So moved by Selectman Duranxis. We have a second?
Second?
All right, second by Selectman Branson. All in favor of this, and I have to do a roll call vote.
Aye.
Selectman Clean, Selectman Brandon.
Yes.
Selectman Yan.
Chuck Yon, yes.
All right, Selectman Duranxis.
Durancis votes aye.
And I will vote aye, and that's 5-0 on the staff appointments.
One appointment to the recycling committee, Ann McDonough for a 2-year term, expiring June 2017.
So moved.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Selectman Brandon, second. Vote.
Aye.
Selectman Clean, aye. Selectman Brandon.
Yes.
Selectman Yan.
Yes.
Selectman Duranxis.
Durancis votes aye.
And I'll vote aye. Selectman Dramo, aye. So that's another 5-0 vote. Okay.
And then, can I just read the vacancies that we're still looking for?
Yeah, please do. That's good.
Council on Aging, we have 1 seat. Energy Committee, we have 3 vacancies.
We skipped cable.
Oh, sorry, I did, yeah. Cable TV Advisory Committee, we have 2 vacancies on that committee. Farm Pond Advisory Committee, there's an associate vacancy. Historic District Commission, there's 1 vacancy. Metropolitan Area Planning Council designee, there's 1 vacancy. Personnel Board, 1 vacancy. Recycling Committee, 2 vacancies. And then Sherborn Open Space Committee, We have a total of 9 vacancies, but we have had 2 people that are already interested in it. So if we could have 3 come forward to join those 2, we would name all 5 of them to the committee and they could start.
Okay, all right. Thanks, David. And so, any other selectmen reports? No? Okay. And then Selectman Durensis, you wanted to have a special report concerning this public records law.
Yes. I have a few handouts I'm going to pass out, if I could.
These are all public records now, right?
Yes. One is a newspaper article from the Boston Globe entitled, "Baker Eases Way on Records." And I'm offering this to the board for the following reason. There is considerable sentiment that government should be more transparent, and therefore that there should be easier access to public records. And there are these war stories out there where records have been denied. In this article, on the second page, there's a reference to the Massachusetts State Police, which won the Golden Padlock Award from a journalism group in June for being the most secretive agency in the country, where they wanted to charge $2.7 million for public records relating to breath test results. So, as a result of all of these kinds of activities, there's been an outcry that improvements need to be made in public records. So various bills have been introduced in the general court, and indeed Bill Galvin, the Secretary of State, is organizing an initiative petition to go on the ballot for the November state election. I present all of this to you because the governor has issued instructions to all state agencies about ways to be more responsive. In other words, rather than waiting for statutes to be enacted and rather than waiting for initiative petitions to go on the ballot and all of that, the governor has proposed for state government a number of fairly simple things. And I'm bringing this here tonight to see if the town of Sherborn would be willing to follow the governor's lead and adopt the same kind of procedures. If you're all if the board is interested in that, the idea would be for us to task the town administrator with preparing a policy for adoption by the board at a future time. So what are the governor's procedures? So I have a second handout. If you could pass that down. And I have some extras here in case anybody wants it. But I want to highlight some of the things. What I would envision for the town of Sherborn is that we adopt a policy, and the policy would contain provisions that would track this procedure that originated with Governor Baker. First would be that we designate a public records access officer to receive and coordinate requests for public records and establish an internal tracking system to ensure compliance with administration's public records policy and existing law. The second part of this would be that we respond within 5 days rather than the 10 days. The third is, and these I'm just reading down the bullet points that are in the center of the page of the document that I've just passed out. The third was putting information on the website as much as we can so that records don't even need to be requested. People can just access them. These include things like minutes of meetings. It includes a lot of the stuff that we're working on, draft warrants, all kinds of documents, perhaps even the selectmen packets that we get, other than the executive session materials. Just put them online.
I think we're doing that already.
Yeah, they're already on.
Okay,
That's a new thing, but they are on, right?
Yep,
That's, yeah.
that's good.
Half a ton.
And then we waive search and retrieval fees for standard public records requests, which is to provide at no cost the first 4 hours of work required for more complex requests and charge no more than $25 per hour for additional time required, and notify the requesters of those costs in advance.
So that's
Standard-
ridiculous, right?
Standardize the costs as set out in the last bullet. The last bullet has 4 subparts, and the part that's of most important is that a precisely defined document request that is 1 to 4 pages gets answered with no charge at all. So if somebody comes in and says, gee, I want to have a copy of, I don't know, the last thing we voted on, if it's 1 to 4 pages, no charge, automatic, you give it to them, no argument. Part of the rationale for that is the time to take to prepare a bill and to collect, 4 pages at 25 cents or 50 cents a page is $1 or $2. It's trivial, but it,
If, can I ask a question?
sure.
If that information is on a website, our website, do you still have to do that?
If they want a hard copy, yes, you have to print it out for
Or
us.
is it for them?
But hopefully the best answer would be if someone comes in and wants a copy of the selectmen's packet,
We just give it to them. We don't charge them.
but you can also refer them to what's online.
95% of people that say that's fine, thank you.
Right. The idea is to pretty much do exactly what the governor's doing. And that way, if state government is doing this, and if a lot of cities and towns are doing it, then maybe some of the anger that's fueling all of this need for legislation would be diffused, because this does open up records to better access and better accountability. So that's the idea.
So Paul, you read the second bullet point. I think you read it slightly differently than it states, which is that it says the agencies will notify a requester within 5 days if the records they are seeking may take more than 10 days or $10 to produce.
Yes.
So it's not that they have to produce the records within 5 days, it's that they have to notify them within 5 days. 10 days is the current public records request requirement for cities and towns. I don't understand how the administration talks about they're going to make their request should be fulfilled in no more than 8 weeks. We only have 10 days to do it.
Actually, you have 10 days to respond.
You have 10 days to give an estimate.
But if you have the information, you have 10 days to give it to them.
No.
If
You
it's
have
at
10 days to
hand.
give an estimate.
You can't respond with an estimate if you've got the documents at hand. You just have to give them the documents.
The law doesn't say that now.
Well, I've got some experience with the AG interpreting it that way, so I would be careful not to respond within 8 weeks and rather respond within the 10 days.
But right now, there's no limit. So let's say you determine that it's going to be a 2.7 million or
That would be great.
43,000,
That would save our
whatever
town.
it
I think
is.
that would be good.
You have to actually give the documents within 8. You're committing to give the documents within 8 weeks.
Yeah.
The actual documents.
Yeah. I
Right now,
can see.
there's nothing in the law that says after you give the estimate, after you give the money, that you then go ahead and do it with any deadline. There is no deadline.
I can see the common sense of trying to diffuse this very bad state bill that's out there right now. And I guess I would also say, though, that we're a small town, and for somebody like Diane, for example, to spend 4 hours looking for documents when she should be doing something else to keep the town moving forward because there's an individual request for certain documents. And we went through a lot of public documents requests last year, spent a lot of town time on those public documents requests and disputing the requests. Perfectly right thing to do because people are entitled to the information, but I don't understand the idea that somebody, because they want to know something, is entitled to getting ahead of the line for all the other things that a small town like ours has to do with its limited staff. And that's the part, Paul, where we run into difficulty, at least I do, with what you're proposing here. I don't disagree with you. It would be good for David to draft up a policy and for the board to have a policy. I don't know that we are as resource unconstrained as Governor Baker seems to be when he proposes something like this.
Well, he's not resource unrestrained. He's just done a early retirement program. Most agencies are decimated.
But if you're DEP and you get a request for some huge amount of information and you've got a clerk or a staff person who's charged with doing that, that means they're not processing permit requests for people to get things built and done. And we would be in the same position. We would be processing information requests under duress instead of preparing agendas or doing other things that would keep this board and other boards in town and the town moving forward. So I think there's got to be a common sense overlay to this. I don't see this as particularly commonsensical. I can see why it's a political play by the governor, and I can see why he feels like he's on the hot seat if the state police and other agencies have been asking for millions of dollars. But I don't know that we should just fall in line blindly. I appreciate you bringing it to us, and there's probably something we should do for a policy. I'm not sure this is it. I don't know what others think.
How many of these do we get?
It's quite frequent if you look at the all the departments together. But typically, I mean, on average, I guess I would say one every other week, maybe a couple a month. But most of them, we respond immediately, like the document is available. It's the ones that, you know, if you can't produce it within 10 or 15 minutes, then it's going to take you 1 to 4 hours or more by the time you understand what they're looking for to get into that area, research it, pull the documents, and get it in. What's timely is getting it into the format that they want to have it in. Now, you're not required by law to produce something in a format, but we do. You know, if they want it in a spreadsheet or something, then, you know, we can do that. And we don't just let them come in and say, you know, here's the pile and you photocopy it. You know, and some towns do. They make the records available and then they've got to do it. We don't charge for copying if it's, you know, minimal. But it's those larger requests that, say, like a Board of Health receives, and then they have to take their staff time of 4 hours, which is a quarter of a position, and if you used that cutoff. And they put everything else on hold while they pull these records, then they copy them and get them in whatever format. They can't do it in the 10 days, so they send out an estimate and require them to put a check on deposit for that amount. But the time period for responding is once they actually pull it and get it in the format that it can be delivered in. You know, the Board of Health is going to want to look at it before it goes out, and then Town Council will want to look at it before it gets set up. Yeah, depending on what it is. I mean, if it's just the number of inspections or something, then that, or a copy of a certain permit, then that's simple. But it's the bigger requests are burdensome, and we don't. It's rare that we charge for the time of pulling those together. It has to be pretty significant.
Conceptually, I'm very much in favor of what. I don't know if this is necessarily the answer, but the issue I'm very much aligned with you. I think it should be much easier. And I'm outraged by what I've been reading in the Globe, and I'm sure that's not the whole story, but nonetheless, I think we should be able to do a good job. But we talked about Diane. There are boards that don't have even that kind of support that would be subject to the same thing. For instance, I wanted to look at some Board of Health minutes, and I go and I click on, oh good, Board of Health minutes. I got to go to the office and get them.
Yeah.
That's something that should.
Yeah,
be. So I think our goal.
That's that.
Our goal should be to get as much of this stuff on the web as we possibly can, which is going to just get rid of a lot of the demand to begin with, and then I think we can deal with the rest of it.
Can I love to add to that?
Can I
Go ahead.
just let me
Paul respond and then Sean. How's that?
respond to a couple of things. Right now, we have a decentralized system. So David's described basically what he does. But there are all these boards and committees and all these people out there. And part of this is it all ought to go to one person. And the same process, the same procedure for everyone.
She's got a lot of spare time.
But that is very important, and it is needed, because somebody submits a request to a department. We have no idea that the request was submitted. There's nothing requiring that employee to fulfill it. We're not going to know about it until there's a complaint that comes in, and that's not the way it should be handled. So we should have some sort of policy that directs all employees to at least date stamp the request at one central spot, and then track that it's been fulfilled. I'm sorry, Paul. That's it.
Well, and the other part was, Dave described how we don't charge for this, we don't charge for that. We are taking the position that this often a very huge burden put on municipalities with these so-called fishing expeditions, where someone comes in and says, please give us, every time any board or committee had a meeting that went after 10 o'clock at night for the last 25 years. And then trying to respond to that is a huge undertaking. And the policy that the governor is proposing does exclude those kinds of requests. What it's trying to do is to bifurcate requests into the simple 1 to 4 page, clearly defined request, and these other big, long requests. And so he's trying to create a fast track, because often everything gets treated like it's a complicated request. And while it's good to hear that often in the Board of Selectmen's office we don't do that, we can't say that town-wide, because the board hasn't adopted any policy. We want to adopt something that would be town-wide, that everybody is doing the same thing. And the beauty of having a fast track for the small, clearly defined things is that that's most of the requests. Not in terms of the volume of pages, but in terms of what people really want. They pretty much know what they want. They're looking for a copy of something. So why not give it to them? As opposed to saying, well, we really have to spend 2 years, we have to have lawyers look at it, and we have to have it reviewed by a board, and all these votes taken, and all of that. And the last point would be, if we don't make these reforms, worse things are going to be imposed on us. So part of this is, we got to do something meaningful.
David, I don't understand why the Board of Health or whoever the board is would ever have to have council and the board members look at a request for minutes. I mean, minutes.
No,
are
not minutes. No.
Okay.
If somebody wanted emails,
Emails, okay.
Sometimes it's a judgment call on whether this is something that requires a redaction or not.
Okay.
Or if somebody requests records from us that can be personnel or confidential or something.
Okay. Sean, you had some comments?
I did. I want to pick up where Mark was a minute ago, and I agree with some of this. There's a couple deal killers in here that there's no way would fly, I don't think, with this board. Definitely the minimum 4 hour. That's definitely, we can't just write off 4 hours anytime someone requests a public records request. But more importantly, I think this is a reaction to something that went on that's much bigger. That no one's going to make the cases happening in Sherborn right now. I think there's some huge improvements we can make on our side that would enable some of this. There's a cost burden here, but we already have a cost burden that we're not paying much attention to, which is our lack of good electronics data storage and everything else, and just the whole IT thing, however you want to call that, the way it's encompassed. Meeting minutes, agendas, everything. We're getting better at the website. I use it all the time, looking at agendas and stuff, but we're still way behind on all of our records. That would enable this to be done more cost effectively and timely. But we should be making improvements for our own good, I think. Not just, we could enact this and do nothing, and it would just cost us more money.
Well, I think that's a better.
In some instance. And I'm saying our grand scheme should be, how do we better improve our own system?
That's a better approach for a policy, than just rotely following this. I think Paul's opened the door to a great idea, but there's probably a lot of things that we can do to make it Sherborn specific, because I think we're in a very different position than the state government is, or any other. I jokingly said they're not budget constrained, but in point of fact, they're going to allocate their resources however the governor tells them to allocate their resources. We don't really have that luxury. There's certain stuff we have to get done or doesn't get done. We're not going to hire another police officer because people are making public records requests to the police department and they've got to dig stuff out of the basement or wherever it is. We're just not going to be able to do that. So this is going to come at a price, and so how do we have a policy that gets the information out there, like Sean says, puts it on the web, but doesn't have us holding a hammer over our own heads?
Let me respond to that, because I agree with most of what he said. But we have two classes of records. We have the electronic records. We also have a lot of paper records. There was a case I handled for a town where we had to prove that something was done back in 1968. And it turned out that town could not find the entire year of 1968.
A lot of people can't find the entire year.
It was a good year. But they couldn't find, they knew that it should be up in the attic, but it wasn't, or they couldn't find it. Then they were looking in the warehouse. They couldn't find the entire year, and so the case got lost. Here, Leland Farms is looking for the warranty on its roof. And we have some paper records, and we've been looking for 3 months through papers. We can't find those records. Where are they? What our filing system is? There's a lot. Every municipality, I have found the biggest challenge as a town council for municipalities is finding the paper. And most municipal records involve paper, and most municipalities can't find the paper. So you put that overlay over the fact that any citizen can come in and ask for that paper, and you can't find it. And here 3 months later, Leland Farms can't get that warranty information, not through anybody's fault. This isn't about fault.
Right.
We can't find that piece of paper.
But based on a policy, it's not going to help us find the piece of paper. And it may make us in a better position in the future.
That we ought to be digitalizing, going forward, we should be digitalizing information that's searchable with a word. So if we want to find a warranty for Leland Farms, we can type in lelandfarms.warranty, and it'll search all our records.
Right.
Well, we're not there, we don't have the budget for it, and we can't deal with 300 years of documents that have already existed. So we have to have a policy that applies to paper records. The solution is not going to be just have everything going forward more accessible electronically. We still have to figure out, if we need to find 1968 records, how are we going to find it? And whether it comes because the judge has told us to produce it, or it comes because it's a public records request. Do you want to stand before a judge and say, "Hey, judge, I can't answer this request for documents because we can't find the document.
Well, if it's true you can't find them, you can't find them. I mean, I'm not sure we should be putting on the taxpayers' back the requirement to search endlessly for documents that either are there or not there. If somebody wants to do that, that's fine. But paying town staff to do that at, to such an extreme may be too much.
That's why you capped it at 4 hours.
I think
That's
4
why the
hours-
government's
I think 4 hours is
proposing.
a lot, but we can, agree to disagree on the amount of time. That's fine. I don't have any objection to the general process of having a policy and digitizing things and being able to find,
I'm not wedded
responses.
to all of the details, but I think it's important that we, as a community, get to the point where we're better positioned to respond to public records requests, that we do it consistently across town boundaries, so we don't have to worry about all these different boards and committees maybe doing things right or doing things wrong. And the closer we can get to be part of a movement of people doing it, I think the better off we are. While it's nice to have one specifically tailored to Sherborn, if it's an oddball thing that becomes too restrictive, then it's not really going to accomplish what needs to be accomplished here.
Sounds like more for discussion in the future.
When is that bill being considered? Do you know?
Right after the August recess.
Do you think it'll be deliberated for a long time?
That's probably not a question I should answer. There are strategies at work and different things that people are trying
Okay.
to address this.
It's easy for the legislature, they're exempt from the public record.
Yeah,
It is, I mean, that's
Then
the
the-
hypocrisy of the whole thing.
the irony is that Governor Baker issues this thing for all of us to comply with, and as a state official, they have to comply with it. But
His office is
his
exempt
office
too.
is
Yeah,
exempt
of course.
too, so he doesn't have to comply with it.
Right, they should, yeah, of course.
And the
But
courts are
the
exempt.
Baker agencies have to go ahead and do this anyway.
Because he's
Right,
done it
they're
in
not waiting on-
administrative
They're
order.
not waiting on
Yeah,
legislation.
he's done it
Oh,
in
no,
administrative
we're
order.
doing this, but this is much less than what the legislation is seeking.
I could see if we were agreeing to develop a policy based on what they're changing their practices to. And if this is what they're changing their practices to, the only thing that I have a concern about is that 4 hours and the $25 limit. The current law allows you to charge the rate at the lowest rate person that can pull the information together. Sometimes that's the person doing that's making more than $25 an hour. So you would be subsidizing any of those requests that come in over
And no
that
limit.
4 hours.
No, there is
No
a
limit on it.
The 4 hours is the limit.
No, 4 hours is the limit on free, and then you go to 25 for an unlimited, they could work for a year.
There's no limit.
No, the
We'd be
first,
hiring someone else's legal aid.
the first 4 hours are free, so let's say that's $100.
Right, but then charge no more than 25 per hour for additional time required.
Yes, $25 an hour.
Well, that's what Sean's saying, it could be.
It could be for 1,000 hours.
Only if the
Then you're
request
charging
reasonably takes for,
$25,000.
Yeah, but it may cost you 40,000.
Yeah, but we're not, how many of our employees are only costing us $25 an hour?
no, that's when you go out and you hire a temp for $10 an hour. I mean, that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, you hire.
Again, we're gonna hire their legal aid. We're gonna be paying their legal aids.
They're what?
We'll be paying for their legal aids
Yeah, yeah.
in our.
Right.
But
That's
the idea is to increase transparency, the idea is to speed up the response time, the idea is to make things consistent across the town, and the idea is to be somewhat compatible with both what the state is doing and other municipalities are doing. So we're not identified as a golden padlock.
Can I make a suggestion here? Have you started your cabinet meetings yet?
Yes, we've been doing them for 2 months. Oh, you mean the public ones?
Whichever.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, if you were to put this in front of those people and say, what are the things we could do to make a big dent in this issue and bring back some specific ideas? Because I don't think we're going to figure out the filing system for the town.
No, I'm suggesting that we task the town administrator with coming up with a policy. And I was suggesting here's a guideline of what's being done.
David, part of that capital budgeting for the compact could also be our IT capabilities too. Doesn't have to just be roads.
Which, yeah, and so that was the second half of my, if we're going to adopt this or something like this, we should use that to help with the momentum to open the broader conversation of many of these things. Because one of the projects I wanted to work on in the future was the building department, that whole area, and records retentions, because there's decades missing. Not 1968.
I'll tell you something, there's decades
the whole
missing
80s.
from a lot of towns. There's decades missing from a lot of towns on
And
that stuff. We are not alone on that kind of
Right,
stuff.
and if they're not missing, they're, we moved town hall, the fire station, we left a bunch of records
There was
there
a
and it
flood,
came here.
there was something else. Yeah,
and it's-
exactly. Yeah.
So that should be encompassed. This should help push that, at least going forward.
Okay, good. That was a good discussion. Thanks for bringing that up.
Well, it's just to spark something, but can we ask the town administrator? I thought I heard Mark say, yeah, have him look at something, and I thought I heard Sean say, have him look at something, and have him work on some kind of policy that he thinks would work for his office. I have the sense that he or the assistant town administrator, unfortunately, should be the person to whom all public records requests go, so we have a tracking system.
So then we need 4 more people identical to David. We're just going to need 4 clones because he can't be the repository for everything that comes in. It's so overwhelming.
I would like to see if things come in, they go to the clerk's office, just like when somebody's filing a petition, or if we're getting something in for subpoena or something like that, there's a copy that's always at the clerk's office. If it's logged in there and then forwarded over to us for assignment to a department, and then us tracking the response of that department, or we fulfill that request, I think that would be good. Then you get somebody who's doing the checking in of the document that's independent of the person that's doing, fulfilling the request. Just a thought,
So you'd have to talk to the clerk about doing that.
which I have not done.
And so I even hate to ask this. What you're offering is that the clerk would become the records access officer if you were adopting this.
I mean, to me, that's what the town clerk.
Is that so that's currently how it is.
I mean, the town clerk holds all vital records.
Yeah.
I mean, but no, I have not talked to her, and she may have a difference of opinion. But that's, if I was going to write something, that's how I would write it. Recommending it.
The governor's only recommending that there be somebody, doesn't say who. So again, I'm urging you all to authorize the town administrator to look at the issue. And I would underscore that by saying, if we don't do something, probably something worse is going to come our way.
And we'll miss another decade of records. Do you need a motion?
I don't know that Sherborn signing up to this is going to forestall something worse coming our way.
Not individually, but one by one as people grapple with this issue. I mean, public records requests are often misused, and so every community in the state has war stories. And I'm sure David and predecessors to David can tell war stories about bad, burdensome, harassing requests in town. But because you have some bad apples doesn't mean that the public is entitled to records. And so when you're balancing the issues, whether it's at the general court or whether it's an initiative petition that the Secretary of State says he will file unless something is done, all of us, all of the cities and towns, all 351 need to move to be more responsive and more transparent. And to move all of them is done one by one. So while Sherborn may not can't speak for the 351, if we do something, people will look at what we've done. If other communities do stuff and other communities are going to be asked to look at this too, as more communities do things, that's going to improve transparency of government. It's going to be better government.
Do you need a motion?
To instruct David on what to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought Paul he had already stated it a couple times. I was just going to move this motion.
Go ahead.
I've moved that we allow the town administrator to begin working on procedures for the public records request and possibly some procedures for improving our own public records storage.
Yeah, I like the public record storage stuff. I think whatever solution we come up with on this, Paul, with all deference to the idea that, you know, Sherborn should be a leader and we're one of the 351, it's got to make sense for Sherborn. And it's got to make sense for a community our size, with our needs, with our kind of staffing, with our kind of budget. I know every community is resource constrained, but we've got to really focus on what our problems are and what works for us. And I know you're not saying anything different, I realize that, but I just would like David to keep that in mind as he's coming up with some variant on this thing.
And if we were to vote this or something like it, would the other elected officials be required to follow it?
Yes, you can say yes.
You can say yes. But
Yeah.
maybe?
I mean, if one didn't follow it, either the Board of Selectmen or some outside entity could bring some sort of complaint that they're not following it.
At the end of the day, if some agency decides, some Sherborn agency says, we're going to disregard this, a public records requester can go to the Secretary of State's office and say, look, I'm not getting an acceptable response from the town of Sherborn, and look what the town of Sherborn has adopted as a policy. This is way off what this agency, this particular agency in the town is doing, way off from that policy. What do you think the Secretary of State's going to do? He's basically going to say, wow, this Sherborn policy is a pretty good policy, we think you ought to adhere to it. They're going to enforce it.
Okay, so we have a motion to second, all in favor? Oh, we're going to do roll call.
Yeah,
so,
you got to make sure Chuck's still there.
Chuck, you still there? You awake?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, good. We're taking a vote now, so Selectman Colleen,
Aye.
Selectman Brand?
Yes.
Selectman Jan,
Aye.
Selectman Durensis,
The rest is votes aye.
and Jamo, yes. Okay, so that's 5-0 to request the TA to develop a policy. We might also think about putting something on the town meeting warrant if we have a policy. That's another way to get, you know, some buy-in from the people who are going to be paying for all this, and to get the other boards to
That's a good idea.
to step up to the plate. Okay. The next thing we've got is set the date of the next meeting. So we talked about September 3rd,
Go back to skate.
15. We will. We'll go back to skate park. Are we all set on the 3rd of September? I don't know that's got to be a very long or particularly detailed meeting at this point, but it'll let us get into September mode.
Was there a
I have a Board of Medicine meeting.
was there a decision on going back to Thursdays?
I mean, I like Wednesdays better, honestly, but I think
And
we had
then-
some constraints on Wednesdays.
couldn't do
Yeah,
it.
after the 9th, Wednesdays are...
After the night?
So then,
We want to do the 9th as our next meeting, and then,
No, well, including the 9th.
oh,
Sorry.
so the 2nd is our next meeting?
No, the 3rd could still work.
Thursday, Thursday.
It would be good if we could,
Well, I can't do the third.
Oh,
if we could say first and third Thursday or second and fourth Thursday.
It would be good. I'm not
As
sure
a-
that's going to be.
No, I mean, it can always be changed. But for our planning.
If it's
just to have it-
Thursdays, the first Thursday works better for me.
Let me, I don't have the Board of Medicine schedule here. Let me get that in. They meet twice a month
On Thursdays?
on Thursdays.
How about if we set September 2nd as the meeting for now?
That's the last Wednesday,
As the last Wednesday meeting.
if he can make that one.
Because Mark can make it, okay?
Okay.
September 2nd?
September 2nd, too. And make sure you have the 2015 calendar out, Diane, when you do.
Chuck, are you hearing us? Chuck?
I never.
Yeah, what date are we looking at?
Wednesday, September 2nd for our next meeting.
I think that works. Hold on one second. Yeah, that works.
Great, okay, good. So now we're up to the next item, which is the skate park donation. Sean, are you the lead for this?
No.
Oh, great, oh, good, we got some images, some graphics.
Policy on our free recreation commission jobs.
Okay. Thanks, Ray. Why don't you introduce yourself? We've got a selectman on the phone, so we need to do everything kind of as if nobody can see you. So just introduce yourself and then explain what we're looking at.
This is the Sherborn Recreation Commission, Leo Kavanaugh,
Ray Weiss.
Ray Weiss, and we're here to talk about an opportunity for the town of Sherborn to work on our skateboard park, which is a project we've been working on, and an opportunity came to us this summer, which we are incredibly excited about, that we wanted to share with the Board of Selectmen.
And I think the purpose of the meeting is, at the end of the presentation, we need a letter to formally accept a gift of materials from the town of Marshfield. So we're kind of informing you what you'd be signing off on to accept the gift.
That'd be great, yeah, and we are a little time constrained, so if we march through it, we'll take a vote on the letter and
There we go.
get just what you want.
All right, the Sherborn Skate Park off of Cemetery Lane is a facility that we have been working on with some concerns of the age of the facility and the safety of the facility, and as an overview, the appropriateness of the facility for what we're trying to do for programs. The facilities that they're now, the scale of the equipment and the features really speak to the advanced user. And yet we're trying to incorporate that skate park into the transformation of that whole space with the Playground Association to something that will speak to us being able to put instructional programs and things of that nature. We went out and got quotes for replacing the aged structures, which are a safety concern, with structures that were aesthetically better, met the needs of our skaters, and spoke to our needs to put program with instructional beginner skaters. And the price tags were in the $60,000 to $80,000 range. As we struggled with how to do that and deal with fundraising, like pennies from heaven, we got an inquiry from the town of Marshfield, who has a skate park which is nowhere near reached its life expectancy, but they are going in a different direction with their whole downtown facility of a poured-in-place concrete facility. And they are willing to gift these structures. Some of them need to be resurfaced with panels only, but they're very advanced, the top-of-the-line structures in the industry, and they're willing to gift them to the town of Sherborn. We can show you some quick couple of slides. But we look at this as an opportunity in one fell swoop to, yeah. So here's the existing park in Marshfield. These are steel and aluminum skate features and ramps that the surface panels are a material called Skatelite, which can be bought panel by panel and replaced as needed. The features here in Marshfield are more, not significantly more, but a bit more than what we would need for our footprint or space in Sherborn. So we don't know exactly which different panels we'll be replacing yet, because we'll probably be doing a little bit of taking this panel that we're not going to, this ramp that we'll not be using, and using some of that material. They're modular in design. The height is much shorter than the heights we have now, and then just a big thing is ramps that have a steep drop and a curve are for more of the advanced bicyclists and skaters. Every ramp here has at least one feature, which is more of the 45-degree angle, gentle slope, which allows the beginning skater to use the ramps and progress from one option to the other within that same piece of equipment.
If I may, the nutshell of this whole thing is, for under $5,000, we can get them disassembled, relocated, painted, pick the best of the cherry pick from them, find a way to help repurpose the ones we don't want, spread our space out over there a little more. If you've been by, I mean, it's kind of a disgrace, the current park, and we can quickly take the ones we want, use the gentleman that we'd hire to put them back together, help us plan an area that's for younger people, have features that aren't big barriers that are bulky, that you can see through, throw up a new fence, and instant, beautification change, along with, almost in time with this, the top lot being done with the, by the playground committee, and just change that whole area. It'd be fabulous.
An additional feature that we're going to be doing, or propose we'll be doing as they have, is all features would be secured in place. The kind of home-built park we have now lends itself to an atmosphere where people bring ramps and boxes and features from home, or modify the ones that are there. And if we're able to build the better park and everything secured in place, together with the police department, we're better able to enforce a policy of no bringing in materials from home, no altering the existing materials. The park is what it is, and we think, and in talking with the skaters, they're all very excited about what kind of park we could build using this equipment.
Great, good. Anybody have any questions up here?
Just aware questions. None of this is pressure-treated wood with arsenic, right?
No, it's all metal and composites, and it really is state-of-the-art. It's just, it's probably around half-life, and by the time we refurbish it, by a professional, with a professional company that specializes in that, it'll all be, brand new and lead-free and better than what we have, safer.
There's no, I've had a number of cases with people getting bad splinters from wood. And they just look like wood.
No.
It's not wood?
Skate-like. And it's, actually this, we have some of that on our current park, which is broken and deteriorated, and it's really not worth the repair. $3,000 to put a Band-Aid on a bad park. So any of the, our plan is when we pull it in, one of the pictures had a dent or a crack in it. We can choose to just not even use that feature, or if we find that it really does fit, then we can pull off the damaged panel, put a brand new panel on, and our intent is to have all the steel painted as well, while we're doing all that.
Good.
For all intents and purposes, you still look brand new.
I'm good.
Okay, so we have a motion to have
So moved.
authorize the letter.
Can you move to accept various skate park equipment deemed to be surplus property that is being gifted to the town of Sherborn from the town of Marshfield, pending final vote of the town of Marshfield?
That was what I was trying to say.
Okay, great. So do we have a second on that?
Second.
All right, so moved, seconded, and now we'll do a roll call vote. Selectman Cleve, Selectman Brandon,
Yes.
Selectman Yan.
Yes.
All right, Selectman Durensis,
Durensis votes aye.
and Selectman Jarmo, aye. So it's 5-0. So David, you would be authorized to send whatever letter
Yes.
they need within reason to
Yep.
request or accept that gift?
Yes.
And when are they taking that vote?
Wednesday.
Oh, great.
Next week.
Good. Perfect. Thank you. This is great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Excellent.
Thanks,
And
Leo.
nice presentation. It looks like a great opportunity. So thank you. Okay. Let's see. Do we have a warrant to consider?
Yes.
Move approval.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
All right. Selectman Colleen?
Aye.
Yes.
Brennan? Selectman Yan?
Aye.
Selectman Durensis?
Durensis aye.
Selectman Jarmo, aye. We're signing the warrant. This is the town administrator pay warrant. And then What do we have next here?
Minutes.
Yeah, we have the approval of the minutes, June 24th. Does anybody have any comments on those?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Selectman Colleen.
All right.
Selectman Brennan.
Yes.
Selectman Yan.
Aye.
Selectman Durensis.
Durensis
And I'm
votes
aye. Selectman Jamo, aye. So we've accepted the minutes of June 24th. Okay. And the next item on the agenda, I believe, is consideration of proposal submitted by Abbey Road Development in response to town RFP for disposition of real property.
Right.
So that's an agenda item. David, why don't you explain to us what this is about?
Basically, the Abbey Road development needed a little extra land, and we happen to have that land, so through the process of the 30B procurement process, we offered up surplus property, and we received one proposal, and that was from Abbey Road Development. So we've been working on some sort of purchase and sale agreement on having the land come, Abbey Road give us some land as part of their proposal, and we give them some of our land so that they can complete their development.
Diane or Mike,
Yes, Chuck?
can you turn the volume up some? I'm only getting about every other word.
David,
Okay.
just please speak clearly onto that. Thanks.
So where we're at right now is looking at the final few issues to finalizing a purchase and sale agreement. For the selectmen to discuss those final details with town council, you would want to go into executive session. But we also scheduled an open session with the developers here in case there were things that needed to be worked out with them, because they can't go into the executive session. So it's up to the board if you want to start an executive session and then see what questions need to be answered, or if we have an understanding of what needs to be resolved, we could have town council and the developer come up and talk. But I think they've narrowed it down to just a couple of issues left.
Well, do you have any recommendations? I mean, I understand that we've got an issue, a reverter issue that has been kind of puzzling everybody, and maybe that's what we need to discuss here, but do you have a recommendation?
There was no, I would have to discuss that with council in executive session, but I can tell you what the proposal.
That's what I mean. I meant a recommendation for anything that we should discuss here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I have an item.
Yes.
First of all, I support the project, and I've done it consistently for many years. So what I'm saying here is not that I don't support the project. It's that I'm very concerned that there be a public sidewalk across the front. And on that, I've been consistent over the period of years since this thing first surfaced. And I received today some material from town council, who's sitting in the back, with a map that shows an easement across the front and a grant of fee across the other part of the front. And if what council sent to us has been agreed to by everybody, then I'm very happy. But if it's a point of contention and it's being refused by one side or the other, then I want to know who's refusing to do this, and then I'm ready to do battle, depending on who it is.
I think council sent you a blow-up of exactly what Mr. Murchison sent us.
That's what I believe I was looking at, right?
Yeah, I don't know, there's
Can we-
nothing on it.
That's the print.
Is that,
What's that?
is she nodding yes?
Town council has some recommendations, we're okay?
James Murphy, 44 Bethel Road, representing Abbey Road Development, LLC. I think we really have made a lot of progress with town council, and I really do think that's what's going to happen today is after you go into executive session, we're going to ask you to come out of executive session and sign all these documents. The two biggest issues that were out there in kind of stencil form were the reverter issue, but town council and I have worked on recommended language that'll be before you in your executive session, which I believe is acceptable to us and is acceptable to the town. It gives the balance between, if in fact the developer did not do anything, that everything reverts back to the town, but if in fact the developer builds and constructs condominium units, that he can freely sell them without having to worry about the property reverting out from under him. So we've reached that balance consistent with the vote that was made in Article 15 of the 2013 vote. The second issue, I think with Mr. Colleen's help, because he was designated by the board to discuss with us before, we have clearly made a 10-foot easement in front of two of the parcels that connects to the 10-foot grant of parcel B. And then what we did is we identified what was the portion of the wall that likely had to be moved. When we started the process, there was a worry that we were talking about 220 feet of wall that potentially could be moved. But again, good counsel, hopefully, on both sides, they think the same as I think of them, that we identified that there was only a pinch point of approximately 20 feet, which is represented in that sketch that Paul held up. And it shows that those 20 feet potentially have to be relocated or removed in order to deal with the pinch point. Otherwise, the town is going to have, not only with land of its own, within its right-of-way, but within either the easement or the grant, more than 10 feet all throughout the front of this parcel, all the way over to the George Fisk property.
Hooray.
Now,
Thank you, Sean.
the town has some obligations, and the town's obligation is to get that sidewalk approved and built, and our obligation is to move that, if we need to, that 20-foot approximately of wall where the pinch point is. We would jointly have obligations to go before Historic District to see if there's any approvals we need to get from them. The third very small point, I think is probably best discussed by council with you in executive session, and she's agreed to shuttle out to talk to me as necessary. And hopefully, if you vote to go into executive session, as opposed to a usual process of not intending to return to open session, that you would limit yourself to returning only to open session if you're successful in reaching an agreement to sign everything. The documents that would need to be signed tonight would be a purchase and sale agreement. We actually have drafted and have available for signature by both the developer and the town, the deeds and the easement coming from one to the other. We would then, tonight, earlier, you saw us leave and come back. Earlier tonight, we did get the planning board to vote to endorse the A&R plan, which the planning board will release if, as and when, you agree to the land swap, so that A&R can also be recorded. We would then anticipate that by next week, sometime, we would record all the deeds, all the easements, and we would have the ability, probably within the next week or so, to begin work on the project.
Where do you stand with the Board of Health?
The Board of Health, we met with them last week. They voted affirmatively to grant us the environmental health permit, which was the thing that we were needed in connection with our amended plan. They had earlier voted back in April to give us an environmental health permit for the original plan as designed, and then we did get the approval last week for the amended plan. So that was one of the conditions that they also had in the environmental health permit, that the land swap be effected. So everything, it's kind of like everything falls and comes together at the same time.
And another question, just because I know there's people who are going to be interested in this, but you said that you think you and council have arrived at a solution on the reverter, and we'll talk with council about that in our executive session. But what is the solution? What does it accomplish?
Well, I think the solution was to point out that really the special permit and the intention of the reverter language is tied to 40A Section 9. 40A Section 9 provides that a special permit, which has not been substantially acted upon, lapses within 2 years, or such short a period of time as the local zoning board has. Sherborn has the 2-year period of time. So we specifically referred to 40A and that standard. And we also, what we did is that we tied the chance of reverter to the issuance of the first full certificate of occupancy for one of the condominium units. In addition, what I would tell the board, which I know there's many lawyers on the board, and they're probably familiar with it a little bit themselves, as part of the planning board process, in order to get planning board's endorsement, you're required to either post a bond or get a surety company or enter into a covenant. And the covenant provides that if you have not constructed the utilities and roadways to service the condominium units, or in some situations like a subdivision, those subdivision lots, then you cannot get a final certificate of occupancy. And the planning board covenant that's traditionally used in the town of Sherborn provides that the planning board on vote, provided that the roadways and utilities have been constructed, can issue a release of a particular condominium unit. And they're going to vote on accepting that as part of the final endorsement. So, in other words, the town is well protected in making sure that the plan is built, and therefore there's no reason for the land to revert, because it was the worry that it would not be built and that there would have been this conveyance that the town would have wanted back. So that's the language that you'll see that town council will point out to you in the most recent drafts.
So what you're saying is that the reverter language would be basically moot after you got your first certificate of occupancy, and the town would be relying on the planning board covenant to secure the completion of the development as approved?
Yes, and they also would be counting on the building inspector. But it reflects town meeting's vote, which was that it complies with the planning board special permit. And so that's what is part of the special permit of the planning board, yes.
You're also protected by the surety bond that he had to pull to get the CO. Right?
No,
Didn't you
no,
said
no.
it'd be a surety bond before?
No. You have an alternative under the law to either get a surety, post a bond, a passbook, or a covenant. And Sherborn, the way they've done it traditionally, they in fact did it also for Whitney Farms. It's a covenant. Any other small developments in Sherborn, it's a covenant. And, basically, there is no value in this project for a developer unless they can convey a unit. So we are stuck. If we can't get a CO because we haven't done the utilities of the road work, then we can't go forward. We can't sell any units. So the town is protected. That was the intent, I think, of town meeting, to make sure the project was built. The whole worry always was that you have a great plan on paper and then nothing happens. And then you've changed your position. And that's not going to happen here.
Any change you made to that project would require planning board approval anyway.
Right. There's both the planning board special permit decision and 40A Section 9 provide for any amendments to the underlying planning board decision. So both of those give you dates by which you measure things. So, for example, the planning board's decision was July 16th, 2015. So the 2-year period would lapse if we didn't do anything on July 16th, 2017. That's in your document. That'll be right in your document. If, in fact, that date's extended because the planning board gives us more time or there's some other changes, then that date gets extended also for that 2-year period of time. If, for example, you probably are familiar with, if somebody had taken an appeal, then that 2-year period, continues on. But we don't have that situation here. But that's just the example how all those processes work hand in hand.
Anybody else have any questions up here?
Oh, I like the idea that we can come back into session and have public dialogue on stuff that we need to have if necessary. So why not go into executive session, see what our lawyer has to say about these points, and if she's in agreement with Jim, everybody's on the same page, and we get the one result. If we're have a disagreement and further negotiations can take place, we can choose either to send our lawyer out to talk to Jim and see if they can work it out, or we can reconvene here with Jim and the developers team and have a public discussion. So I think structurally, procedurally, we've got a good process.
Okay. And I know we've got a lot of interest in the folks at Woodhaven, and maybe Mr. Shea has a question.
Yes, I have a question. Are you interested in public comment before you go into executive session?
I think if you want to make a comment, I would hear it if the board isn't willing to hear it. If it's what's that?
I just want to know if you want one.
Well, if you don't want to make one, then we don't need one, I guess.
Well, I think that...
So you want to make
You can't make one then. You need to be at a mic.
You have to come up.
You have to be at the mic though, George. We do have Chuck Young is on the phone, so we need to have everybody talk. And you have to talk about both the mics, including the one that Jim's about to knock off the table. There you go.
If you're going to allow public comment, I would suggest that public comment would be less than productive without knowledge of the people who are commenting of the documents that you're about to go into executive session to vote on. So I am asking for copies of all of the documents that you will take into executive session that will result in a vote. And then I would ask you not to go into executive session, but if you do, not to vote on that until you have heard or given us an opportunity to make public comments to you regarding what we think as taxpayers and as the residents of Woodhaven.
Yeah, I don't know that we were looking for additional advice on the documents themselves, George. If you have a policy question or something we should try to...
Well,
we've got town council. I mean, and we've got...
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean...
well, there must be an interest or a reason you've asked the
Jim has
question.
cited a section of the state statutes. I've had no opportunity to look at those. I've had no opportunity to look at the provisions of code that he's been talking about. I think that if you're going to have legitimate comment from the public should be as well informed about the documents as everybody else is. And it's clear that town council has got it, Jim has got it, and you will have it. Why can't we have it? And you're going to discuss it back in open session anyways.
Then let's not invite public comment. That'll
Okay.
make that simple.
So
That's
you,
basically what he's asking us to do. Let's just go into executive session and get this over with.
Okay. What's the...
I suggest that
Well, can I ask
what
Jim
you're
a
locking people out of any input to the Board of Selectmen who are going to make a decision without any public input.
Jim, do you need this vote tonight?
Yes.
I don't think he needs to vote tonight.
If he needs the vote tonight, we don't want to hold up this project. But if you can hold up the project for a week or whatever, till our next meeting, then we can reach agreement on the documents, make the documents available because they'll become public anyway.
Right.
And allow for comment to be made during that period of time and then take the final vote at our next meeting. So why do you need to vote tonight?
Okay. Just a couple of things. One, some of the documents were there. If they looked at the RFP, they already saw what the purchase and sale agreement looked like. So if they have any comments about the purchase and sale agreement that references the types of transactions that are happening, those are already available. And they could have looked at them and they could have said that they didn't like something that's in the form of the RFP's purchase and sale agreement that was connected to it. They could have done that. They could have also looked at the amended special permit that lays out all the information. They could have looked at Article 15, which is the reverter language that's already in the public record. So all those things for someone who wanted to look at these things in advance and not to delay the process were available. Now, as to timing, the way that this works is that we cannot wait till September 3rd. I guess because there is planned activity on the site that is going to occur, hopefully within the next week. We are putting erosion controls out there that are recommended by the Conservation Commission. We may do some exploratory work that we've already spoken with the building commissioner that we're permitted to do without getting a full building permit. that requires us to do that work. And the reason why, we're a little bit on eggshells here is because if we don't use this time right now, between August and October, we will lose a full 6 to 8 months. We will lose a whole sales season. So, if someone has a substantive comment, it's about a sidewalk, it's about something with Woodhaven, they can say it without having these documents in it. And, George is an experienced attorney. He is probably well aware of the provisions of 48 Section 9. They're public record, nothing hidden or strange about those. So I would still urge you to take the process of voting to go into executive session, figuring out whether or not there are any issues that separate us, come back into a full session, and on recommendation of council, make a decision as to whether or not you'll sign the documents. It is not as if when you have a school committee contract that you have public comment about what everybody else is negotiating about. You have the obligation as selectmen to make that judgment. You've been empowered by town meeting to make that judgment. And I think it's very good of you to take substantive public comment, although you're not required to. I think it's usually been the practice of the board to take substantive comment, and I urge George, if he has substantive comment and not procedural delay comment, to make those comments, put them right out there on the table. Let's see if we can take care of the problem right away.
I can't agree with Jim at all. First of all, most of what he said is time sensitive. It can be done with or without a vote on this committee, or this board. That's number one. Number two, the amount of public documents that are available without any knowledge of what was going on, since you've been discussing this in executive session for over a month, maybe two, is a false argument against delay. I would like to see them. If they're public documents, I'd like to see them. I'll go down to the clerk's office or wherever they're being held, and I'll look at them. But I can't look at them now, can I? I have to look at them tomorrow when they're doing business. If you're going to go into executive session and vote or make a determination as to whether there's a conflict between your position and Jim's position or his client's position, how are you going to take any public comment into consideration when you're making that determination as to whether there's a difference or there's a conflict that you can't resolve? And what are you going to put on the table if you can't resolve it on what Jim and his client has put in front of you? I'd like to have Woodhaven especially, but the town's residents on board with what you do, and I think if they are given a chance to explain what they want in a meaningful way, and you vote against it, then that's what you do. And that's where your obligation comes in. Not now to rush it through. This project has been on the ground around, for a year, maybe longer, and all of a sudden we've got to do it in a week and a half? No, doesn't make sense to me.
I'm going to disagree with you, George, that we've been talking about this project in this board, whether it was executive session or not. We have public comment period every meeting, and we've had a letter from Woodhaven that was directed to us with Woodhaven's concerns.
For certain things, didn't we?
So if there's anything new you want to add to that,
no.
Okay.
So what I'm suggesting is we don't know what you've done with our letter. And from what I've here, there's some disagreement between what we asked for and what Mr. Murphy is putting on the table.
Well, I think your issues were taken into account. I think that's what you're hearing.
Well, I'm asking an opportunity to point out the differences and why. And I can't do that without opportunity of looking at the documents. And I don't understand a week and a half. That's what you're talking about.
David, can I have their letter? Do you have
You're rushing something through that the town's not going to like the process, but nothing else.
So this is the letter, George. So what you're saying is these are the concerns. There will be no further encroachment of proposed new buildings beyond those shown on the preliminary plan dated April 17th, 2013 is prepared by Schofield Brothers. That's really a planning board issue, but is that the case?
And the
Jim,
reason
or-
it's an issue is that the plan shows a proximity that's uncomfortable on the crest of the hill that runs down to Woodward.
The plans of April 17, 2000, the plans of April 17, 2013 have subsequently been changed. The plans that are out there have the new design plans. Before the roads went around the buildings, excuse me, before the roads went on the inside of the buildings, and now the road goes around the buildings. So you have a pocket community in the middle. And those differences in plans were discussed at length at a public hearing, a joint public hearing, in fact, of the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, a subsequent hearing at the Board of Health concerning their issues. So the sketch that existed in April 17, 2013 ultimately became formalized into actual plans. This is where it is.
So that was approved by the planning board and the Concom after public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So that's not really, I mean, it's potentially a second bite at the apple to try to get us to upset things if you're not in agreement, but you had that opportunity. It's really a planning board issue, the way I see it.
Agreed.
But
I've never seen it.
I don't interrupt you, why not? The plan has already changed once. What you're asking us to do is to go to every board meeting that has any input into this process. And we're not paid to do that. Mr. Murphy's paid to do that, and you were elected.
That's what the hearings are for, George. That's the point. If you had a concern, that's the process.
I didn't even know there was going to be a concern.
Okay, this letter was dated November 24th, 2014. I think this approval came after that.
Okay, he approved a change in the plan. Are they going to change it again?
Okay,
If they changed it again, they'd have to go back to a public hearing.
there are two approvals. The first approval was March 17, 2015, and that was the plan that showed the drive and the interior of the units. And then on July 20th, there was another approval, an amended special permit, and that showed the drive around the units.
But Jim, the buildings have not changed in position from the first plan that you brought and your final plan. I mean, the structures are still where you had originally planned to put them.
The structures are between the change of the buildings themselves, maybe minuscule, but they're essentially in the same space
Right.
as they were between March 17th and July 20th.
And therefore, that to me didn't change. That question has been answered.
So question one has been answered.
That's
Okay.
been answered.
All right. So number two was there's assurance that Woodhaven has access to their utilities on the property and it would remain a natural area.
Okay. All right, so again, the Conservation Commission negotiated very strenuously to keep things in a natural way. So, for example, Sherborn, if you didn't know this, has much more stringent wetlands regulations than the state does. Under the state regulation, no part of this property at all was subject to wetlands protection because the only area that impacted wetlands was an isolated land subject to flooding.
I think they're just talking about their sewer, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're talking about their septic field utilities and it would remain a natural area. I don't think they're talking about the whole wetlands
Okay,
process.
well, I'm going to tell you. So anyway, but Sherborn has protection for ILSF, in isolated land subject to flooding. So we had to go through the whole conservation process, and we had to agree that there would be certain areas that would be untouched, and those areas are typically in the buffer zone between where the ILSF was and where this property was. And that buffer zone in Sherborn is out to 100 feet. So there were some areas in which the roadway was in those areas. So the Conservation Commission negotiated with us and got us to add some areas which we will not disturb on the other side of the roadway, closest to Woodhaven, and leave in the natural areas as part of the Conservation Commission approval. So
Hang on a second.
we were
Can we get this discussion taken care of, please? Thank you.
We offered that additional protection. So the area between the roadway and Woodhaven will stay in its natural condition.
Okay, so that answers number 2?
Right.
That was your concern?
And I believe Jim in his earlier explanation answered number 3, which we were concerned if you had the town had the land swap with the partnership, and then a shovel never went into the ground, we felt that the land should be null and void.
And that's what the town voted too, and that's what we were insisting on in these documents.
Right.
And we understand town council and Jim have worked it out. We wanted to go to executive session and get advice of town council on what was included in the document, talk that through, and then as Paul suggested, come back here if there was a further discussion or to take a vote. So I think now I'm going to want to go into executive session if the board is willing to do that. Okay?
Yes.
All right, good. Thank you, George. I mean, you teed up the right discussion, so thank you.
Well, let me ask what you're going to do now.
We're going to go into executive session and talk to our attorney, who...
I'm asking you not to take a binding vote until, well, you can't. You have to come back here.
I guess, George, I hear you saying that, but I have no idea why you would say that when I just read your letter, and Kitty, who wrote the letter, said that all those concerns were satisfied. I believe all the concerns are satisfied. Jim believes all the concerns are satisfied. You told me that those were the concerns you had.
Well,
so why do you need...
What about the reversion?
That's the third point on the letter. Okay. I'm going to move...
See what you have settled or will settle on the reversion.
I think Jim explained it, George, earlier.
I listened to the explanation. It's not what we asked for.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Murchison, sure, you might as well. Everybody else is. Go ahead. It's your project.
I appreciate it.
Bobby, if you could sit up here, please. Thank you.
I just want to clarify something that's really important to me, and it doesn't have to do with the questions at hand, it has to do with the process. Because for 2 years that I've worked on this project, I've tried to reach out to everybody in this community for feedback and comment and dialogue. And over the last 2 years, I've met with the elder housing folks on multiple occasions and have presented my plans to them. And they have been very, very supportive. When we made the latest change, I sent them a letter with all of the drawings and all of the site plans and everything to Kitty and to Joe Meany. And the feeling was, and offered to come and speak to those new plans. And I received communication back that it wasn't necessary, that Woodhaven, the folks at Woodhaven were very supportive of the plan. And to my knowledge, everyone at Woodhaven to this day is very supportive.
I think you're still hearing the same thing tonight, and I mean,
No, I'm not angry.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands the process that we've gone through has been very open and very communicative, and I just want to make sure that that's clear at this point.
No, thanks for bringing that up. And I think, what I'm hearing from Mr. Shea, who is an attorney like many of the other people in this room, is that, until you see something with your own eyes, you don't necessarily trust what other people are telling you. And I guess, what I'm saying is we've got town council, we've got developers council, we've got a board that's charged with doing this, and I'm just going to ask you, George, to trust that we can get this done in a way that protects the interest that, you've expressed or Kitty's expressed on that, because I don't think it's productive to keep going through another round just so anybody who's interested can read the language at a final time. So I'm going to move that the Board of Selectmen enter into executive session to consider the purchase, exchange, or value of real property as it pertains to the Peace Abbey land swap pursuant to Chapter 38, Section 21A 6 and 7, Suffolk Construction versus DCAM, and further, that I declare that the discussion of both items in an open meeting would be detrimental to the town's position. The board will return to public session if it reaches an agreement tonight, and I need a second and a roll call vote.
Second.
Second.
Could I modify that?
Sure.
We're only going to come back if we reach agreement. I'd like to leave that more open-ended. If we have a disagreement and we want to have a discussion about it, then we should be able to come back on that too.
All right, the board may return to public session. How's that?
Still second.
Okay, good. So I've got a second, Mr. Colleen.
Okay.
We'll now have a roll call vote. Mr. Durensis.
Durensis votes aye.
Mr. Colleen.
Votes aye.
Mr. Jaimo, aye. Mr. Brandon.
Yes.
And Mr. Yan.
Aye.
Okay, and we'll have to, Chuck, I think we're going to have a different way of communicating with you if you're going to go into the executive session. The suggestion was that we use the cell phone that's on speaker and have you dial David, or David dial you, I think.
Perfect, got it.
David will dial you. Thank you. Okay, so we're now in executive session, and as I said, we may return to...
Chuck, I'm hanging up on you there.
Ready? Okay, we're back in open session, and we've concluded our executive session where we spoke with town council. And does anybody have a motion to move things forward now?
Yes. First, I would say that we believe we have reached agreement between council, and there are some changes being made in the papers. So the motion's a little more convoluted because the paperwork is going to have to catch up a little bit after the meeting is over. So the idea is that we're going to authorize everything and we're going to sign the purchase and sale agreement subject to and have it held by our lawyer until all the changes are incorporated into the final papers. So that may mean that we sign the purchase and sale agreement tonight, but we may also be coming in the next few days to sign whatever else needs to be signed. So with that as sort of an explanation, I move that we approve the 3 documents of purchase and sale agreement. Do you have those 3 here?
Amanda, what are the 3 documents we're supposed to...
If I may?
Yeah, that'd be great, thank you.
Deed, grant of access, and sidewalk easements and agreement is one. The purchase and sale agreement is another.
The motion would be to approve and authorize the board to execute the purchase and sale agreement with Abbey Road Development, LLC. The vote would be to accept the deed as revised from Abbey Road Development, LLC. And the vote would also be to approve and authorize the Board of Selectmen to execute the right, title, and interest deed conveying the town's interest in certain parcels to Abbey Road Development, LLC, pursuant to the response for proposals that was approved by the town.
That's
Subject to the edits being incorporated.
Subject to incorporating the agreed-upon changes in clean form.
That's my motion.
Great.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, good.
Second.
Okay, so we have moved and seconded. Any further discussion up here about that? Okay.
One question, Amanda, when do you expect these documents to be ready?
I'll have them for the town administrator by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
You have a question?
Bill, I have a question. I request a copy of those documents.
As soon as they're in file form, you can have a copy of those documents. You have something?
No.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to take a vote now, I guess? Mr. Colleen?
Aye.
Mr. Brandon?
Yes?
Mr. Yan?
Yes.
Mr. Durensis?
Durensis votes aye.
And Jaimo, aye. Okay, so that's 5-0, and we've authorized that, and good luck moving that forward. And as soon as the documents are ready, we'll have at least the majority of the board able to sign the P&S, and then we can move forward from there. Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Second on the motion to adjourn? Second. Okay, all in favor, Mr. Colleen?
You need a roll?
We do.
Aye.
Mr. Brandon?
Yes.
Mr. Yan?
Yes.
Mr. Durensis?
Durensis votes aye.
And I vote aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
All right.